You know, I can remember back when the current crop of modern horror games first started to appear in the indie gaming scene, with the likes of Penumbra and Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and how they were soon followed by experiences like Dear Esther and The Stanley Parable. Now, this game feels like it's trying to be the best of both of the early entries in those two different genres, an interesting interactive experience, and a horror game that makes a great laxative. Layers of Fear is a first-person horror game developed by Bloober Team SA and published by Aspyr for PC, Mac, PS4, and Xbox One. And while it has an interesting concept behind its story and premise, and it does achieve a genuinely chilling atmosphere at times, it falls far short of greatness by trapping itself in the pitfalls of tedium and artistic pretentiousness. Now, let's not beat around the bush. Is this game scary? Yes, it is. There are plenty of moments where the game heaps the atmosphere on you, and it lures you into the right mindset where you can be scared just by what could be around the next bend in a hallway. And these are punctuated by smaller moments where the game goes into the uncanny valley, and you really don't know why, but you just want to get out of a room. But with that being said, is the game scary all of the time? No, it's not. Towards its second half, Layers of Fear has shown you pretty much everything it has to offer, and its attempts at scaring you come off as annoying rather than anything bone-chilling. This is because the game gets so repetitive and relies very heavily on a formula that it becomes all the more predictable as you play. Get into a hallway, find the door you're supposed to open, enter a room with creepy stuff, see some creepy stuff, get unsure over which door to open, solve a light puzzle, and find an item.
I needed something to add the... how should I put it? Final touches.
Rinse and repeat. It also becomes quite clear that while playing, that PT was one of this game's biggest influences. But whereas PT knew when to use visual effects and sound design sparingly and when to go all out, Layers of Fear just throws all of these at you when you're a third of the way through it. This has the unintended effect of causing moments of significance to instead come off as pretentious attempts at artistry in a digital space, that if anything are more likely just to cause eye strain and confusion than quiet contemplation and introspective thought. Some of the sound effects don't even go with the game's 19th century to early 20th century art direction, in particular a static sound effect, which can lead to some puzzles or sequences in the game to just feel out of place. As for the story, it's actually one of the best aspects of the game. The premise is that you're a painter who's been dealing with a severe case of creative block that's derailed your career, and your family has been torn apart by tragedy after tragedy, and now your sanity is unraveling from all the stress as you try to make your masterpiece and salvage your legacy. This is communicated through a combination of written documents and voiceovers, as well as some visuals in the environment. I can see some people missing certain narrative details with this setup, but it does give the storytelling a genuine sense of artistry, especially since the non-verbal sequences leave the bulk of the finer details for the player to visualize in their head, which plays well into the horror aspect, and these are handled well enough. On the other hand, the narrative moments that are told through voiceover are pretty lackluster, thanks to some really unconvincing voice acting.
I needed to remove the flesh from the bone. At first, I was lost as to how, but then I sawed it off with a handsaw.
This makes the otherwise tragic story feel more like an episode of The Bold and the Beautiful. If the voice acting was removed, it wouldn't be at a loss to the game, and the storytelling would actually be all the better for it. Gameplay, though, is strictly one note, and for a lot of people this will be the make or break factor for how long they stay with Layers of Fear. As you probably guessed, it's pretty much identical to what you'd see in something like Amnesia: Machine for Pigs, only there aren't any threats you need to hide from and evade, or some evil presence that stalks your movements as it corrodes your sanity. You're just walking from room to room and interacting with stuff with the mouse to figure out how to move forward. That isn't to say this style of gameplay can't be entertaining. Look at something like The Stanley Parable, which is a walking simulator through and through, but the difference there is that that game had a story that unfolded with the player's actions, with a subtle sense of humour, and the player was free to almost interact with the environment in any way they wished. In Layers of Fear, it's rigidly structured and so firmly governed by its own formula that can't help but get boring at some point, if not for the majority of the time. Now, when it comes to the visuals, this is a great looking game. The devs definitely put the Unity engine to great use, and at times the visuals are just straight up photorealistic. Sure, there are some places where the texture work looks a little stretched or underdeveloped, or areas where it's too dark to see what the hell you're even supposed to be doing, but these are very few, and you need to be looking very closely in order to notice them in the first place. Or they can just be fixed with a quick trip to the options menu. Then there's Layers of Fear's overall length. It's pretty short. If you steamroll through it, you'd finish it in about a day or so, which isn't too bad considering some of the tedium that does come with it. But if you're one who really wants your money's worth, the story does support multiple playthroughs, which ties into one of the 3 endings. There's also a short expansion called Inheritance that acts as an epilogue to the base game. Inheritance has you play as the painter's daughter returning to her childhood home to finally confront her personal demons, and the expansion does do a valiant effort to address a lot of the main game's issues. The shorter length stops the gameplay from feeling too monotonous, they change up each horror sequence into something unique in of themselves, eliminating the repetition problem, and it even addresses a personal issue of the overall story. When the hell does all this take place? However, despite all this, it still has some bugbears. Like, what was the point of giving the daughter a torch when you're almost always in a horror sequence and it does nothing except light up areas that are bright enough to see already? Or that instead of PT, a lot of the horror sequences now seemingly take influence from Alice in Wonderland, and when they try to be full-on trippy, they just come off as, well, some pretentious sequence from the main game. Inheritance won't win over any naysayers, but it is still a solid supplement to the main game and the narrative. Layers of Fear is a lot like a well-done but unmaintained painting. From a distance, it looks nice, with its pretty graphics, creative premise, and moments of genuine spine-chilling dread, but when you get up close, you see that it's riddled with irreversible flaws, from formulaic design to boring gameplay, and an overall pretentious air of itself that undermines its interesting story and scares. It's an alright 6 out of 10 game that feels like it tried to combine the best of 2 genres and only ends up with mixed results. I can only recommend this if you're curious like I was, or if it's on sale and you got nothing better to do. But you're better off just checking out the other better horror games and walking simulators that came before and after it.
Hey, princess. What have you got there? Oh, that's so lovely, sweetie. But why pink?
Awesome, thanks for checking out this video, really appreciate it. If you like this video, then how about you like, favorite, and subscribe? Or if you're watching this video on VidMe, then how about you give me a tip? $1 or $2 really would be appreciated. Anyway, in terms of movie reviews, coming up soon, I'm going to have my review of The Thing, the original, not the prequel, out as soon as possible, as well as some reviews on some more recent stuff, like Get Out. And for game reviews this month, I'm going to be taking a look at Mass Effect Andromeda and Prey. I got all that and more coming up, so stick around.